Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Firstpost America. I'm Eric Hammond. We're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. China says efforts towards Taiwanese independence are doomed to fail as it conducts massive military drills around the island with 71 aircraft and 21 warships. An Israeli strike on Beirut kills 3 people, including a Hezbollah official. This is the second such strike on Lebanon's capital during a fragile 4-month ceasefire. Russia says its army has captured another village in eastern Ukraine as its troops press on across the battlefield despite President Donald Trump pushing for a ceasefire. International aid groups accuse Myanmar's junta of blocking aid to earthquake survivors. The military has also faced criticism over continued airstrikes in rebel-held areas. And Greece's popular tourist islands of Paros and Mykonos hit by flash floods with heavy rainfall set to continue. Authorities are urging residents to stay indoors. We begin at the White House, where anticipation is building as President Donald Trump prepares to unveil sweeping tariffs on what he calls Liberation Day on April 2nd, promising to be lenient and protect reliance of American industries on foreign goods. President Trump's plan involves reciprocal tariffs aimed at matching the duties imposed by other countries on U.S. products.
No, we're going to make it all countries, and we're going to make it very lenient. I think people are going to be very surprised. It'll be, in many cases, less than the tariff that they've been charging us for decades. So I think people are going to be very, very surprised.
The White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt confirmed the president will announce details on April 2nd, but whether these tariffs will be product-specific or broader remains unclear.
On Wednesday, it will be Liberation Day in America, as President Trump has so proudly dubbed it. The president will be announcing a tariff plan that will roll back the unfair trade practices that have been ripping off our country for decades. He's doing this in the best interest of the American worker. Again, I will let the president get into the specifics of the announcement. It's his announcement to make.
Now, White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro estimates that tariffs could generate around $600 billion annually. And India, in particular, faces scrutiny from the Trump administration. However, the commander-in-chief has claimed that India has agreed to substantially reduce tariffs ahead of the April 2nd deadline, but details are scarce.
Well, as you know, Prime Minister Modi was here just recently, and we've always been very good friends. India is one of the highest tariffing nations in the world. They're very smart, and he's a very smart man and a great friend of mine, actually. And we had very good talks. I think it's going to work out very well between India and our country. Very, very well. And I want to say you have a great prime minister.
Now, on the other hand, Canada and Mexico, which are America's 2 largest trading partners, already face steep tariffs. In fact, last month, President Trump implemented a partial month-long delay of his 25% tariffs on both countries. And in retaliation, Canada implemented counter tariffs on American goods targeting steel, aluminum, and other imports. Now, the Trump administration also narrowed down on steel and aluminum imports from the European Union and placed 25% tariffs on those items as well. The European Union then announced retaliatory measures worth $28 billion, but delayed enforcement until mid-April. Now, tariffs on Chinese imports have also not been spared. In February, the Trump administration enacted 10% tariffs on all Chinese imports and doubled them to 20% in March. Now, in retaliation, China imposed tariffs of up to 15% on American goods, including coal, LNG, and crude oil. As President Trump's Liberation Day draws near, businesses brace for turbulence. And as the clock ticks closer to April 2nd, the world wonders, will this be a bold step toward fair trade or the first domino in a global economic fallout? The answer is just hours away. We now move to the Sunshine State of Florida, where two crucial special elections on Tuesday could possibly shift the balance of power in the U.S. House of Representatives. In Florida's 6th Congressional District, Democratic candidate Josh Whale faces Republican Senator Randy Fine. And despite representing a district Donald Trump won by over 30 points in the last election, Whale's campaign has gained unexpected traction. The Democrat has raised a staggering $10 million, dwarfing his Republican challenger $1 million. Meanwhile, in the 1st Congressional District, Republican Jimmy Patronis, Florida's chief financial officer, faces Democratic challenger Gay Vallimont, a gun control activist. Now, Patronis, who won his district by a landslide in November, now faces a more competitive race due to Vallimont's strong fundraising, bringing in $6.4 million compared to Patronis's $1.1 million. Now, the Republicans have pulled out all the stops to secure these seats. In fact, President Trump himself has campaigned heavily for both Republican candidates through teletown halls, emphasizing the importance of holding these seats to advance his agenda.
Your vote in this crucial election will help determine whether the radical left will grind Congress to a halt, which is what they want to do. Just stop everything, all the progress that we've made, which is record-setting.
Not only the commander-in-chief, but conservative groups and a super PAC tied to his billionaire buddy Elon Musk have also poured money into both races.
It definitely creates a lot of anxiety that there's that much money coming in from all over the country. And they're driving it into a part of Northwest Florida that's never seen this much money ever spent on a campaign in the state's history.
Now, Democrats, on the other hand, have faced challenges with limited support from national organizations. However, both Democrats believe they can win by leveraging high Democratic enthusiasm, appealing to independent voters, and swaying moderate Republicans dissatisfied with recent cuts to federal services orchestrated by both President Trump and Elon Musk.
These districts are so Republican, there would ordinarily be no reason to believe that the races will be close. But what I can say, almost guaranteed, is that the Democratic candidate in both of these Florida special elections will significantly overperform.
Now, the stakes are high, and the House is currently divided 218 to 213 in favor of Republicans, meaning the party can't afford to lose seats, especially in deep red districts. A win for the Democrats would mean a big step closer to a majority in the narrowly divided House. However, regardless of the outcome, the elections are seen as a key test of voter sentiment, as well as setting the tone for the 2026 midterms. But for now, both parties brace for a tense election day in Florida. And now moving on, after Columbia University, President Donald Trump seems to have another Ivy League institution in his crosshairs, Harvard University. The Trump administration is threatening to pull out billions in federal grants targeting Harvard over alleged failures to address anti-Semitism on campus. Columbia University has already lost hundreds of millions in federal funding over similar concerns. Will Donald Trump pull the plug on Harvard's funding as well? Here's the story with more.
From cancer cure to the humanity-defining consequences of artificial intelligence. At Harvard University, science finds the task to solve the modern world's most pressing challenges. But President Donald Trump's administration could be just one step away from pulling the plug on some of the most advanced scientific research-related developments of our times. The US government has announced a review of nearly $9 billion in federal grants to Harvard as part of its investigation into how the Ivy League institution handled anti-Semitism in the wake of pro-Palestine protests on the campus. The administration said it will examine over $255 million in current contracts and $8.7 billion in grants spread over multiple years. The Trump administration says Harvard has failed to protect students from quote-unquote anti-Semitic discrimination in what critics believe is a reference to the pro-Palestine encampment at Harvard last spring. Addressing the purported concerns raised by the Trump administration, the university's president, Alan Garber, said that the institution is committed to tackle anti-Semitism, calling anti-Semitism one of the most insidious forms of bigotry. The Harvard president emphasized the university's commitment to academic freedom and called for dialogue. Trump's threat to terminate Harvard's funding tranches follow the cancellation of $400 million in federal funding to Columbia University over what his administration described as unchecked anti-Semitism in the New York-based institution. In response, Columbia University agreed to the government's demands to tighten rules on campus protests and hire security officers with arrest powers. Days later, the university's interim president, Katrina Armstrong, also resigned from her position. The Trump administration called the New York-based institution's reaction a promising first step towards regaining federal funding. The federal funding cuts, added with a politically charged atmosphere, have even contributed in a drop in applications at Columbia, with many reconsidering their enrollment. Unlike Columbia University, the Trump administration is only reviewing, not cancelling, the grants and contracts at Harvard. But the New York-based institution's federal funding cuts have put its Massachusetts-based Ivy League counterpart on a cautious road ahead. With billions in federal funding at stake, Harvard's response to the Trump administration's scrutiny can shape not only its own future, but also the broader landscape of higher education and scientific progress in America.
And now we head to the Middle East, where the Houthi rebels claim they shot down yet another American MQ-9 drone over Yemen's central province of Marib, which is home to the country's oil and gas. The Iran-backed rebels said that the American drone was destroyed by a quote-unquote locally manufactured missile as the U.S. forces continued to attack Houthi targets in the capital Sana'a and the rebel stronghold Sada region.
Our air defenses succeeded in shooting down an American MQ-9 enemy drone while it was carrying out hostile missions in the airspace of Marib Governorate. This was done with a suitable locally manufactured missile.
Now, the show of resistance from the Houthis came hours after President Donald Trump vowed to continue striking Houthis until they stop attacking the ships linked to the United States and its allies in the Red Sea. A warning against future strikes, President Trump said, quote, "The real pain is yet to come for both the Houthis and their sponsors in Iran," end quote. Meanwhile, the U.S. Military Central Command, or CENTCOM, which oversees troops in the Middle East, released a video claiming to show preparations to carry out more strikes on the Houthis. The video showed 2 missiles being launched from a ship as well as 3 fighter aircraft taking off from an unspecified military base. The latest conflict between the Houthis and the U.S. forces began on March 15th when the Iran-backed rebels resumed targeting Red Sea shipping over Israel's attacks in Gaza. Now, Houthi-held parts of Yemen have faced nearly daily attacks since then as the Trump administration attempts to stop the rebels from threatening vessels on key maritime routes. According to the rebel-aligned Yemen media, over 60 people have in fact been killed in the U.S. airstrikes on Yemen since March 15th. Meanwhile, the Houthis have made it clear that the attacks on Red Sea shipping will not stop until the war in Gaza is brought to an end.
The Yemeni armed forces affirm that they will continue to prevent Israeli navigation in the Red and Arabian Seas and will continue to support the Palestinian people until the aggression on Gaza stops and the siege is lifted.
And as the escalating tensions between the U.S. and Houthi rebels ramp up with elevated optics of military actions, the fate of the Red Sea shipping routes remains uncertain in the backdrop of war in Gaza. And finally, we turn to Europe, where Norway is reviving a Cold War strategy as geopolitical tensions with Russia are now on the rise. Deep beneath its Rocky Mountains, long-abandoned Cold War-era bunkers are being reactivated to house fighter jets and submarines. The move underscores Norway's renewed focus on defense in the Arctic, one of the world's most strategic regions. Our final report details why these underground bases are making a comeback.
24/7 and has the overall command and control of
in today's unpredictable world and geopolitically charged unprecedented times, national security and sovereignty are at the center of every government strategy. But how does one ensure it? For Norway, the answer lies underground. Beneath its rugged mountains lie Cold War bunkers. Once considered obsolete, now being revived as Europe's tensions with Russia rise. During the Cold War, Norway, a NATO member bordering the Soviet Union, built an extensive network of underground military facilities, including fortified hangars and secret submarine bases to defend against a possible Soviet attack. Now, two of these bunkers are being reactivated. First, the Vows Air Station, a fortified hangar for Norway's F-35 fighter jets. Second, the Olavsvern Naval Base, a secret submarine facility carved into a mountain. Once deemed unnecessary, these bases are being modernized to protect Norway's forces. Vows Air Station opened in 1938 and was initially used by Germany. During the Cold War, its hangars were reinforced for a possible Soviet attack. Today, Norway's multi-million-dollar F-35 fighters are stationed here. The base's reactivation aims to protect the aircraft from drone strikes like those seen in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Olavsvern Naval Base features a deep-water dock, dry dock, and massive blast doors. Once designed to hide submarines from Soviet satellites, it was largely abandoned after the USSR collapsed. In 2013, it was sold to private investors who allowed Russian vessels to operate from it. Now Norway has retaken control with upgrades underway, and the US Navy reportedly showing interest in basing nuclear submarines here. But why this sudden restoration? Long before invading Ukraine, Russia expanded its northern fleet, increasing military drills in the Arctic and reactivating nearly 50 Cold War-era bases. Norway is responding in kind by restoring old bunkers and strengthening its Arctic defenses. It is reinforcing its strategic position in the north. Norway is not alone in restoring or building new bunkers. Sweden has reopened its Muskö Naval Base, a vast underground complex near Stockholm. It has also invested $10 million to check and renovate its civil defense shelters. China has built a massive underground submarine base on Hainan Island, and Iran has also developed an underground missile city in the Persian Gulf. But for many NATO countries, reviving Cold War bunkers is too costly. Some have been flooded, destroyed, or turned into museums or nightclubs. But Norway sees a different path. As modern warfare evolves, it is returning to a proven strategy, going underground to ensure its survival.
That's Firstpost America for this Tuesday, April 1st. I'm Eric Ham signing off from our studios here in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in.